we will do domain theory in this lecture. These are the objectives of this lecture. First, I will introduce different types of energies in magnetic materials. Then I will explain magnetic anisotropy energy, magnetostatic energy, Blockwell energy, and magnetostrictive energy in detail. Solid structure takes up a configuration such that the free energy is minimum. Here capital E is the free energy, capital T is the absolute temperature, capital S is the entropy, E minus Ts is called the Helmholtz free energy. The total energy of the domain structure in a ferromagnetic material depends on magnetostatic energy, crystalline energy, domain wall energy, and magnetostriction energy. We will talk about this energy in detail in this lecture. I have explained the easy direction and hard direction in our previous lectures. Higher magnetic field is required to magnetize a crystal in a particular direction than other directions. Now here you can see the graph of magnetization versus applied field for iron, nickel, and cobalt. In the first graph we can see the curves for iron. In 100 direction we can saturate the magnetization by applying a small magnetic field. So 100 is the easy direction for iron, 111 is the hard direction for iron, because we have to apply a larger magnetic field to saturate the magnetization along 111 direction. Similarly for nickel, the easy direction is 111, the hard direction is 100. The structure of the cobalt is hexagonal. I have explained the hexagonal structure in the previous lectures. Along the C-axis we can magnetize cobalt easily. So the easy direction of cobalt is C-axis, and the hard direction is along the basal plane of the hexagonal lattice. In our previous lectures I have explained the C-axis and the basal plane of hexagonal lattice. According to the graphs given in the previous slide, there is a medium direction for iron and nickel. The potential energy is lowest in the easy direction. The potential energy is highest in the hard direction. Excess of energy required to magnetize a specimen in a particular direction over that required to magnetize it along the easy direction is called the crystalline anisotropy energy. If there are preferred direction of magnetization in the crystal is said to show magnetic anisotropy. Anisotropy is expressed in terms of K1, K2 and K3 etc. K1, K2, K3 depend on temperature. Also, they are different for different materials. Suppose Ek is the extra energy required to magnetize the crystal in a direction making angle theta with easy direction. If the crystal is uniaxial, only a single easy direction along the crystal axis. Cobalt has a hexagonal structure. The hexagonal materials are uniaxial materials. The anisotropy energy of a uniaxial ferromagnet can be given as sigma Kn sine theta to the power 2n, where theta is the angle between the magnetization vector and the easy direction of magnetization. Magnitude of the anisotropy constant Kn decreases rapidly with increasing n, so we can neglect K2, K3 and higher order terms. We can only the constant K1. So the energy Ek is given as Ek equals K1 sine squared theta. Cubic crystal is non-uniaxial. Hexagonal crystal is uniaxial. In a cubic crystal, there are three directions of easy magnetization. The anisotropy energy depends on alpha 1, alpha 2 and alpha 3. Alpha 1, alpha 2 and alpha 3 are called direction cosines. Here theta 1 is the angle between x-axis and the particular direction. Theta 2 is the angle between y-axis and the particular direction. Theta 3 is the angle between z-axis and the particular direction. In cubic crystals, the easy directions can be along the cubic edges if K1 is positive, or along the cubic diagonals if K1 is negative. Theta 1 is the angle between the particular direction and the x-axis. So for the x-axis, theta 1 is equal to 0. Theta 2 is the angle between the particular direction and the y-axis. For the x-axis, theta 2 is equal to 90 degrees. Theta 3 is the angle between a particular direction and the z-axis. The angle between x-axis and z-axis is equal to 90 degrees. So theta 3 is equal to 90. And similarly, alpha 1 is equal to cosine theta 1, so that is equal to cosine 0, that is equal to 1. Alpha 2 is equal to cosine 90, that is 0. Alpha 3 is equal to cosine 90, that is also 0. Then we consider y-axis. The angle between x-axis and y-axis is 90 degrees, so theta 1 is equal to 90 degrees. And theta 2 is equal to 0. The angle between z-axis and y-axis is 90 degrees, so theta 3 is 90. Then alpha 1 is equal to cosine 90, that is 0. Alpha 2 is equal to cosine 0, that is 1. Alpha 3 is equal to cosine 90, that is 0. And similarly, for z-axis, theta 1 is 90, theta 2 is 90, theta 3 is 0, because the angle between x-axis and z-axis is 90 degrees. Theta 1 is equal to 90 degrees, because the angle between the y-axis and z-axis is 90 degrees. Theta 2 is 90 degrees. Then alpha 1 is equal to cosine 90, that is 0. Alpha 2 is cosine 90, that is 0. Alpha 3 is cosine 0, that is equal to 1. along x-axis alpha 1 is equal to 1, alpha 2 is equal to 0, and alpha 3 is equal to 0. So the direction cosines of x-axis are 1, 0, 0. Similarly, for y-axis, direction cosines are 0, 1, 0. For z-axis, direction cosines are 0, 0, 1. So only one of alpha 1, alpha 2 or alpha 3 is equal to 1 along any cubic edge. If we neglect the second term given in the previous equation, Ek is equal to k1 times alpha 1 is squared, alpha 2 is squared, plus alpha 1 is squared, alpha 3 is squared, plus alpha 2 is squared, alpha 3 is squared. The first term is always 0 for any set of alpha 1, alpha 2 and alpha 3 values given above. This is the minimum value of the first term. Because body diagonal makes the same angle with all x, y and z axes, direction cosines along the body diagonal are 1, 1, 1. First term will be 3k1 in the equation given in the previous slide. If you substitute alpha 1 equals 1, alpha 2 equals 1 and alpha 3 equals 1. This is the maximum value of the first term. When k1 is positive, the first term should have the minimum value for minimum energy. The first term is minimum for cubic edges as given in the previous slide. When k1 is positive, EC axis is along the cubic edges. When k1 is negative, the first term should have the maximum value for minimum energy. The value of the first term is maximum for body diagonal. So when k1 is negative, EC axis is along cubic edges. Anisotropy energy is the energy required to rotate the magnetization from EC direction to a given direction. Anisotropy field is the field required to rotate the magnetization from EC direction to a given direction. Anisotropy field is given by equation Hk equals 2k1 over mu naught ms. Here mu naught is the permeability in air, ms is the saturation magnetization. Hk is large along the hard direction, Hk is small along the EC direction. Here you can see the values of K1 for some materials like iron, nickel and cobalt. Then an example is given here. In this example, you have to calculate the energy required to turn the spontaneous magnetization from 100 direction to 110 direction. So if you substitute alpha 1 equals 1, alpha 2 equals 0 and alpha 3 equals 0 in the equation of energy given in slide number 11, you can calculate the energy along 100 direction. If you substitute alpha 1 equals 1, alpha 2 equals 1 and alpha 3 equals 0 in the equation given in slide number 11, you can calculate the energy in 110 direction. If you take the difference between two energies, then you can find the energy required to turn the magnetization from 100 to 110 direction. The value of K1 is given here. If you draw the graph for 100 and 110, then you can mark the energy difference on the magnetization curves. That is the area between 100 curve and 110 curve. In slide number 4, you can see the curve measured along 100 direction and the curve measured along 110 direction. The area between those two curves is the energy difference on the magnetization curves. If the exchange energy established a single domain in a specimen of a ferromagnetic material, then work done is stored as potential energy in the field outside. For an example, we can see this kind of magnetic field around a bar magnet. If we divide the material into domains, then we can reduce the magnetic energy. Here you can see some examples for how we can divide a magnetic material into domains. The magnetic energy in case B is half of the magnetic energy in case A. The magnetic energy in case C is about 1/4 of the magnetic energy in case A. D and E are called the closure domains, because if you connect the magnetization within all the domains in case D, then we get a closed loop. So D and E are called the closure domains. The magnetic energy is 0 in that case, because there is no magnetic field outside the magnetic material in case D and E. I have explained the domain wall in slide number 13 in lecture 6 of ferromagnetism. That domain wall is called the block wall. When we go from one domain to other domain, the magnetization gradually rotates within the domain wall. So it takes place in a gradual way over many atomic planes within the domain wall. If the exchange energy is lower, when the change is distributed over many spins, here you can see how the magnetization rotates within a domain wall. Here N is the north pole of the magnet, S is the south pole of the magnet. Anisotropy energy will be small if the spin change abruptly. So block wall is thin. The thickness of the block wall depends on the exchange energy and the anisotropy energy. When a ferromagnetic specimen is magnetized, the length and width of the sample slightly change. This phenomena is known as magnetostriction. This deformation is different along different crystal directions. For an example, the deformation along 111 direction is different from the deformation in 100 direction. Domains will either expand or shrink. Positive or negative reversible strain along the axis of the magnetization can be observed. The work must be done against the elastic restoring force. The work done by the magnetic field against this elastic restoring force is the energy due to magnetostriction, and that energy is called magnetoelastic energy. The strain due to magnetostriction increases with the magnetic field. Finally, it reaches a maximum value known as magnetostriction coefficient. Magnetostriction coefficient lambda is given by delta L over L. Here delta L is the change of the length, L is the initial length of the sample. Then you can see the magnetostriction coefficient of iron in different directions. If we apply the field along 100 direction, lambda is equal to 20.7 into 10 to the power minus 6. If we apply the field in 111 direction, lambda is equal to minus 21.1 into 10 to the power minus 6. Here you can see a part of a magnetic hysteresis loop. We have done magnetic hysteresis loop in our previous lectures. When we increase the applied field, first we can observe the reversible world displacement, then irreversible world displacements, then the rotation of the magnetic movement. If we remove the applied field, the domain wall will come back to the initial position in the reversible wall displacement. However, the domain wall will not come back to the initial position after removing the applied field in irreversible wall displacements process.